In my nearly 17 years of doing this, I have to say this is probably one of the most weirdly transformative cycles and phases that I've seen in my time in this industry, and perhaps that we may have ever seen, talking to some of the people that have been doing this a little bit longer than me. We've had some major events wrap up. They're going to give us some insights as to what the marketplace looks like currently, as well as some things that might be coming down the pipeline, and a few other random tidbits of news. My name is Josh, the RV Nerd. Welcome to Bish's RV. This is your monthly-ish RV industry update. So the Hershey RV show recently concluded here, and that is often looked at, since it is the largest RV show in North America, not the world, but North America. It's often looked at as a major indicator as to how things are going to be going for the remainder of this season and, of course, into next season. It was kind of a tale of mixed indicators. Basically, everyone says attendance was down. Some people saying attendance was way down. It kind of depends. But what's interesting is a lot of, at least your more premium brands, are reporting really strong numbers out of this. Like Brinkley, Alliance, Jayco, Cougar. They were all, well, in some cases, I think Brinkley was nearly double in terms of sales and popularity they were the year before. And overall, every other brand that I talked to, they were, despite the lower attendance, either slightly up, basically mostly flat. And keep in mind, most of those brands were reporting record sales last year. So with fewer people, they paced the same number of sales. And this is interesting because this really aligns with something I've seen from the show events that I've been attending over the last couple of years. I have also noticed, in most cases, attendance has been slowly dwindling at these events, but sales have been the same or better, which seems very counterintuitive if we're going to use our college words. And I think it's because there's so much more information available on the internet now. And I'd be really curious if what I'm describing, if you're like, that's exactly what we did. Leave me some feedback. Tell me if this applies to you. I feel like not too long ago, people felt like they needed to go to the RV shows to see the new things, just to get an idea. But I think as more and more media content, RV content, like I make YouTube stuff, but I'm not the only guy that runs a camera. More and more people are making RV content now than have ever made RV content before. I feel like this makes it easier for someone to see the things and decide if maybe they're interested or not before they, leave home and go to an RV show and pay for parking and hot dogs and all that stuff. And then I think what's happening is the people who are actually showing up at the RV shows, the average level of intent and intensity is way higher than it used to be, despite the fact the average attendance is a little bit lower. So the sales are still strong because people are coming to make a final selection or look for that trailer to make a deal on that one today. But fewer people are going just to look at the things. That makes sense. And another big event will have just concluded by the time this video comes out, although is about to start at the time that I'm recording this video. Because of the big RV manufacturer open house that is, to you, has just concluded, to me, which is just getting ready to start, I had to record this video early, so there might be some weird kind of time delay, recency conflicts. But this will be the major event where RV manufacturers are showcasing almost all of their new stuff to the dealers this year. So get ready for a big burst of new content, new things coming out there across whatever media, people, and channels you prefer to watch. There's going to be a lot of new stuff coming down the pipeline very, very quickly. So make sure you stay tuned for that. Man, it's subjective, but the new Cougars are looking good. Anyway, speaking of new, there's a new era, a new start for an old name out there. If you've been watching these updates or following the RV industry, you may be aware that Heartland RV, or what we knew as Heartland RV, is gone. Everything that was Heartland RV, all the production, all of the existing models and offerings and all that, it was all closed down, it was all shut down, it was all shuttered. The Heartland names and whatnot were reassigned as a subsidiary to Jayco, who had to come up with a plan for this real quick. And we are just now seeing essentially a relaunch of something called a Heartland, but The reason I want to make a special point of this is I've heard so many people saying, oh, it'll be the same thing. It's literally not at all the same RVs. They're not the same people, not made in the same facilities. Being under the Jayco banner, that means that it will be totally different people, totally different models, production, features. They'll have, they have a, what they call 100% PDI. What that means is that every single model goes through one of Jayco's PDI facilities. Now, what that doesn't necessarily mean is that every single model is 100% perfectly flawless when it rolls out the door. But looking at warranty stats and whatnot, they're definitely better than average. So this could be one of the best things that ever happened for the Heartland RV name. But I really want to put this out there so that folks understand what will be called Heartland RV, or what is now called Heartland RV, has literally zero to do with anything that ever used to be called Heartland. What's going to be a little bit confusing though is they're adopting this back to basics, moving forward kind of concept, where they're going back in time to kind of the names that work. So like Prowler, Sundance, North Trail, Cyclone, Bighorn, those will be your 5 Heartland offerings. From what I can see, it looks to be very parallel to, not identical, but very parallel to a lot of Highland Ridge offerings, which makes sense, also being a Jayco subsidiary. What you're going to see here is they're all going to have their own little different kind of, there will be similarities. Like if you go to a family reunion, you can definitely recognize, like, oh, that's probably one of my cousins, they sort of look like me, you know, like one of those kind of things. Like you'll notice the family resemblance, but it might be one of those things like, you don't even go to this school. Like they're different brands with different identities. There will be a lot of similarities, but all I want you to know is that it's a very different offering from what it was. I would encourage you to give it a look, give it a chance. The little bit I've seen has looked very promising, but I haven't seen much yet. So who knows, maybe we'll get a chance to get some of that out here on the channel for you. And speaking of new, we're going to see a brand new name come to the RV marketplace, beginning with this open house event. It will be the first effective, like, public showing of Axiom RVs. They will be premiering their initial 4 models, 2 Vendetta fifth wheel toy haulers, 2 Imperium fifth wheels. And the idea here is they're trying to move things forward and do things different. Some wall constructions are different. They're doing things like mini split ACs that people have been asking for. A bunch of stuff that people have been asking for a long time that the industry just kind of went, well, as long as no one does it, nobody has to do it. These guys decided, let's make a mess of things and let's move the needle forward a little bit. I haven't seen them personally, but I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken, it might be myself and you know, maybe Matt from Matt's RV Reviews. I think we might get a couple of the first cracks at putting some cameras on these. I'm not entirely 100% sure on that. We've been in some talks to make some things happen, but I do think Bish's might be adding this to our lineup at a few key stores. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more about those, make sure you hit that subscribe button and stay tuned. But in the very near future, you're going to hear a lot about yet another entirely new RV manufacturer. And for the 3rd time since 2023, RV sales have actually increased as compared to the same month of the previous year. And this is the first time that's happened in back-to-back months in a very long time. Most months since 2023, we were still coming off that pandemic production and purchasing decline, but it seems like we might be slowly inchworming forward here right now. Currently, year to date, there have been about 225,000 RVs purchased. Now, these are registrations, so these are purchased by actual customers. These aren't wholesale shipments. This is actual sales. The last couple months have crept up. So year to date, we are slightly ahead of where we were last year. This is largely being carried by the travel trailer market. Although I noticed the Class C's have recovered a little bit, so it seems like those might have bottomed out and are slowly making their way back up. But most segments are down, some wicked painfully. Looking at you, pop-ups and motorized. Pop-ups are, that whole segment of the market's almost gone at this point. I'm just sitting here wondering how long can they last on life support? I don't know. But also, something I noticed weirdly interesting in the Canadian stats. For the most part, Canadian RV sales are off compared to last year, although US RV sales are up slightly. Canadian RV sales are off a decent chunk, but the Class C market was up like over 70% more purchase versus last year. I don't know if that's, I would love it if somebody could chime in the comments and give me some insights here, because I don't look at that segment of the market super close, but I'm guessing like it's supply based. Like maybe last year there were just a bunch of dealers who weren't able to get their hands on stuff, or didn't, or something, who suddenly now were able to. I don't know, but whatever the case is, all of a sudden Class C's are showing back up in Canada. And based on those trends and some expectations of things that might happen with things like interest rates, the RVIA, the general governing body of the industry, they are projecting a continued slight increase in shipments for the rest of the year. Not sales, but shipments. And that is expected, according to their estimates, to continue to slightly increase this next year. So through the remainder of this year, we're expecting something like a total of 320 to 350,000 shipments, which means a lot of sales better happen real quick between now and then, but there's plenty of time for that to happen. Then next year, they're expecting a slight increase, like maybe about plus 10,000 more. In my experience, RVIA tends to estimate a little bit high. I appreciate the positivity. I appreciate the enthusiasm. And I don't know, I guess we'll see how things play out. Oh, speaking of rates, obviously interest rates are a big point of consideration and concern for a lot of people making RV purchases, considering the vast majority of which are financed. There's been a lot of talk about federal rates. Are they going to shift up, shift down a little bit? I was asking our finance teams. We've actually seen some lenders already drop a little bit, maybe like a quarter point, not like, oh boy, like 3% interest rate reduction. Nothing crazy like that. I'm not trying to artificially, encourage somebody to go buying something they normally wouldn't have. But lenders that lend into the RV industry are seemingly optimistic about this enough that they're willing to drop their interest rate. And if you think about it, an interest rate is a lender's assessment of risk in giving you this money. How risky is it gonna be? How unlikely are we to get our money back? So they're thinking things are going to be good and going to be positive. So when you start seeing a couple lenders move like that, it is hopefully a good indicator as to other lenders following suit in the future, because logically, if lender A hears that lender B has a lower interest rate, the other lenders tend to try to fight to follow suit. And as long as no one's losing money, they all tend to go that way. So with any luck, we might see a little bit of relief in the interest rate column for folks making purchases moving forward. And although we hadn't heard much about this for a while, because a lot of the legislation was sort of defeated, I guess for lack of a better way of saying it, we are starting to hear again about this California RV ban. For clarity, no RVs specifically are being banned. This relates to emissions. Primarily, the legislation is primarily directed toward diesel vehicle emissions. So the chassis builders, the engines they use have to make a certain emissions requirement for an RV built on that chassis to be sold into one of the 10 states that has voluntarily adopted the California emissions rating. So it's not exclusively a California thing. This actually affects 20% of the states that are out there. Again, it's not a direct ban on RVs. What would be required here is there's a bunch of chassis suppliers whose current designs wouldn't meet these requirements coming into the next year effectively. Anything on a 2024 chassis already built and shipped into these states bypasses anything. This would only affect 2025 chassis production moving forward. And as weird as this sounds, you're like, well, we're in the 2026 RV season. A lot of the 2026 motorhomes are actually built on 2025 chassis. That's just a weird thing that happens in this industry, and it really messes up younger insurance agents who have never encountered something like that off a VIN number before. But what exactly transpires here will remain to be seen. So it's not specifically an RV ban. It would prevent those RVs from being shipped to dealers in those affected states. Now, the thing is, it was really intended, I think, to kind of clip the larger diesel models, but the way the legislation reads, it would affect almost any motorhome with a diesel engine, including even most of the Class B market, because of how the weight restrictions are worded within this legislation. Some folks have asked, just to kind of proactively answer some questions, where you say, well, what if I'm, say, a California resident and I want to purchase one of these things out of state and then bring it in? Well, if you want it registered in California, it has to meet California emissions standards, which is kind of a weird thing there. So if you can get it registered somewhere else, you might be able to work around that. But then we start getting into some weird gray areas that I don't have all the answers for. So this is going to very quickly become like a borderline media firestorm, and you are going to see a lot of talk about this from various YouTube type outlets and whatnot. So this will be a very fast moving target. Like, there's going to be a lot of like maneuvering and political changes and day-to-day things. So if you're not in one of those states, you don't got to worry about it. Like, here in Michigan, we're not under the California emissions rating. So if you're in Michigan or Indiana or something like that, one of the 80% of states not affected by this, you don't got to worry about it whatsoever. But if you are, you might want to look into how quickly you had considered making a purchase to potentially insulate yourself from something like this. I'm not encouraging you to spend money you don't have. I'm just encouraging you to educate yourself and make a decision that feels correct for you. And taking a look at the used market, this is one of those areas where if you use some AI actual intelligence instead of artificial variety, you can see, like, if you read a bunch of articles that are going to be out there, they're going to say
the used RV market fluctuates and blah, blah, blah.
Well, no, it's mostly flat. The used values are currently very flat. They're expected to stay flat for a while, whether it's towable or motorized. I'm well aware that once you see, I think it's the blue bars on the motorized chart here, it's going to look like the motorized values have spiked up. That's because a small number of big Class A motorhomes rolled across the auction block, spiked that value up temporarily, but overall it's still pretty flat. Again, for the near future, used values are expected to stay pretty flat where they are. The overall pricing in the new RV market has stayed relatively flat to crept down slightly in the most popular segments, which that's where you put the most pressure on the used market. So if the new market's staying pretty steady, the used market's gonna stay pretty steady. What I will say is this does vary a little bit regionally. So if you live around, snowflake country like I do, as we are approaching a cycle where the temperature is getting ready to dip to the point that people don't want to camp anymore, used values take a hit, because the likelihood of a dealership having that piece of used RV inventory sitting there through winter waiting to sell it in spring goes up. So that hasn't happened yet, but that is approaching pretty quickly. So once again, I'm not trying to encourage you to do something you didn't want to do. I'm trying to give you information and education, basically saying your trade's worth more now than it's going to be 2 months from now. What you choose to do with that information, that's up to you. I stumbled into recently here, Winegard has partnered up with T-Mobile, offering a new data plan for RVs. Winegard is a company that makes a lot of like antennas and things for the RV industry, but they also sell these routers. I think they call them gateways or something like that. But they make these 5G enabled routers that if you get a 5G SIM card, you can, for $99 a month, I think you can get an unlimited data 5G T-Mobile plan. I have no personal experience using this. I don't have T-Mobile as a provider, but I know a lot of people really swear by the T-Mobile home internet, even though it's called home internet. It is able to be used by roaming RVers. Actually, some friends of ours, Peoples and Places, that's one of the things that they like to use. And they have Starlink basically as a backup. But their primary internet they use for their family of 5 in their full-time RV is T-Mobile internet. Cool thing about this program is, yeah, you got to buy the couple pieces of hardware to go with it, but it has a pause and resume effect. So like if you're like, yeah, but I don't want to pay all year for something I'm not using, You can basically tell them, okay, for the months of April through June, I'm going to be camping, activate my plan, and then put it on pause the rest of the time. So that is a newer offering that's out there. I'm not well versed on what they were offering recently, but when I see something with more and more people enjoying a mobile lifestyle, doing mobile working, doing full-time RVing, doing remote learning for kids, and full-timing with a family in RVs, even during the school season, anytime I have something like that that I think might be useful for you, I want to put it out there and at least give you an idea like, maybe I should look into that a little more. So if that's useful, let us know. And something I found came as an absolute shock to me. Texas is the first state to adopt a mandatory requirement for things like youth camps and campgrounds to have things like real-time weather monitoring, evacuation, preparedness, and plans. And I think this is great. I think that we're doing something here, obviously, to protect not just people, but kids specifically. But the question that I drew from this is, how is that the first time a state has adopted policies like this requiring the mandatory protection and prevention of harm for children against well-established seasonal weather events? Why is this just now becoming a thing? Is there something, I think I just slapped the microphone, sorry. Is there something I've missed why this wasn't a more mandatory thing before? I don't know, but I'm glad it is. So tip of the cap, kudos to you, state of Texas, for making this happen. I also learned about the Texas Association of Campground Owners, who you may better know by their acronym, TACO. Gen Y has also recently announced that they are acquiring Vision Door. Now, if you're not familiar with these names, Gen Y is a builder of some pretty awesome fifth wheel hitch systems that they've been around for a while, but they really became more of a mainstream conversation item when the Brinkley Model G luxury fifth wheel toy haulers adopted them as a standard issue item. They're fifth wheel and gooseneck couplers with a ride and handling package that's very different from what you normally find out there in the marketplace. Well, they have just acquired Vision Door, who tends to make things like baggage and compartment doors, which seems interesting. Well, there's not a whole lot of details on this yet, but Gen Y basically said, RV baggage doors and compartment doors haven't changed in like decades, and we think that's dumb, and we're gonna do something about it. I'm paraphrasing, but what that means, I don't know, but I guess buckle up! We're on to the next generation of baggage door technology! And speaking of acquisitions, I want to be very careful in how I go about this because I don't want to be seen as attempting to attack or anything. I'm simply trying to share information on something that's happened in a very factual manner here. But when I start mentioning other dealerships, sometimes people get their blood pressures up. Anyway, a letter of intent was put out recently announcing the Campers Inn RV group is pursuing potentially purchasing the assets of Lazy Days RV. If you've been paying attention, and again, I'm not trying to hurt anybody, but over the last several months, over the last year, it doesn't take a lot of Googling to see that almost every month the question is which and how many of Lazy Days stores are being sold to other RV dealer groups. Like I know General RVs bought a bunch, I think Blue Compass bought a handful, and I think Campers Inn themselves even purchased a few. In this letter of intent, Campers Inn basically made a statement saying that there's about 5 or 6 specific current Lazy Days locations they definitely want to keep open. They're not sure what they're going to do necessarily with the rest of them. Now, what I'm not trying to say is, oh God, they're going to close all the stores, guys. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not trying to fearmonger or anything. Simply sharing the facts that you yourself could Google online, but saving you the trouble from doing it. But just now, on a personal note, it is crazy to me how the RV marketplace has changed. Those of you who have been watching this channel, I hear some people say, Josh, I've been watching you since the Haylet days. Well, you know what? Even my shirt has changed. We are in a consolidation market cycle. That's not going to change. It's happening. It already happened years ago in automotive. most of us were born way after that condensing period happened in the automotive industry, but it's already happened to hotels. You know, there's only a couple major automotive producers, there's only a couple major hotel chains, and they have a bunch of different names, but they're, you know, like the Hilton Group or something like that. RV dealerships are kind of essentially heading that same direction. This is something that's already kind of happened, if you think about it, on the RV manufacturing level, and now it's simply finally starting to happen at the RV dealership level. It's happening in campgrounds. I don't see it stopping. I don't see it changing. Just being real, it may not be too awful long. Like, we might not be 40 years, we might be 5 to 10 years before you find out there's only a couple major dealer groups and then a handful of mom and pop stores that are going to be out there. There's positives that, there's negatives to that, but that is probably the reality as to where we're heading. I got mixed feelings on it, certainly. What about you? The U.S. Department of Agriculture may be removing their roadless rule restriction from about 59 million acres of national forest land. It's not official yet. It is in process. But effectively, the USDA has flat said we have the intention of repealing this roadless rule, or basically in a bunch of our national forest land, you were not able to make new roads or reconstruct old roads. Now, there's two thought processes going on here. On one hand, this may allow things like logging crews or, you know, firefighter crews easier access to these areas. It could also help support the economic factors of those more rural, like timber-based economies. But there are the conservation concerns of habitat loss, erosion, and degradation of water quality in those areas from runoff and things, having all the machinery running through there. This is something that could affect about 1/3 of our national forest land. It would have potentially some big effects in some of the Alaskan forest areas, as well as some areas in Utah and Montana. And that's what I have for you this month. Again, I did have to record this a little bit early. Only about half of the month had actually gone by, so there might be extra news that comes out next month. I'm not sure. But if you appreciate how we still get out here, get you this information, let you know what's what on the up and up and the down low, either way, I suppose, hit that subscribe button. And if there's something here you found useful, please share this into your favorite social feeds to help spread that message a little bit. And short of that, keep the questions coming, keep the comments rolling, and I'll do my best to continue to fulfill things as I'm able. So until next time, take care, stay safe, have fun, and best wishes from Bishes, everyone.